Hey, Internet. Welcome back to Same-ish Different Day, the podcast where we continue the march into madness. I'm Raza Malik, and I'm joined with my Amazeballs co-host, Bailey Nargang. Also featuring the lovely Wine Mom, the arbiter of everything TikTok and YouTube.
Hey, it's Wine Mom.
Bailey here. Gotta drop that reminder that you can find this show on any streaming service you use. Remember to leave a sassy review, and you want to bash us or our opinions generally? Well, you can follow us on Instagram, TikTok, and maybe some other places in the future.
I join these guys weekly to keep their egos in check as we break down complex social issues and talk about why your kids shouldn't be watching family vloggers.
We talk about real-ish on a real level. Ain't got time for the Twitters? Don't worry, we have collectively wasted our existence combing the internet for you.
Also, before these two get carried away, don't be shy. Join our Discord for the inside scoop. You can also support us on Patreon, where you can work your way up our very own class system. And don't worry, it's pay to win.
So, welcome back to another episode of Same Shit, Different Day, where we try not to rip each other's heads off.
Let's get it. What's up, internets? Welcome to Same-ish Different Day, the podcast with a name that we can't say anymore. This week, we want to talk about something that we all struggle with. Misinformation, right? But that's a big thing to tackle. So before we get preachy or give our own opinion, give our own definitive ideas on how to deal with it, we wanted to have a discussion on how each of us approach the issue individually. So we got a few questions lined up, a la Raza being a great script writer. And I would like to toss it to each one of us so that we can give our personal ideas or opinions on our experiences relating to it. So to start off with, right, we're going to do the most tricky one, and is going to Raza first. What is misinformation?
Misinformation, as Wine Mom said off, I'm going to steal Wine Mom's example.
Okay.
That's not cool.
It's fine, I'll allow it.
I said I'm going to steal it. It's broken telephone. Essentially, if you get a sort of new piece and then you try to break it down, it gets broken down in a way that can give you the wrong sort of information. What a lot of news outlets do this, like Fox. Can I say Fox? Yeah, I can.
Yeah.
They do kind of a lot of misinformation because it helps their ratings, but generally misinformation is just telling the story in an ahistorical way, meaning it's not. It's true, but it's not all true. There's either stuff that's left out, or there's a little bit of an over exaggeration of the truth, or an embellishment of the story.
Cool.
Not good. Sorry,
I would just like to correct Raza. I said that misinformation is broken telephone for adults.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you very much.
Okay, so
I agree.
Adults.
That's my contribution.
Okay, I support that. I also feel like, on that same note, but a little bit more meta, is it's not understanding your own personal perspective as you look at things, right?
Yeah.
So not being aware of the filters you may place upon how you read and interpret events. So, next question. Same cycle we're going to go through, all right? When looking up current events, what can one do to navigate around misinformation? Razzie Dazzy.
Do your own research. Make sure the sources you get are what's the word? Are they have a good reputation in the community. They are credible. And then just do a lot of the stuff, a lot of the legwork on your own, because if you're gonna ask somebody else to do it, chances are they're gonna inject their own personal biases on them, and that also kind of ruins real or the actual truth of the story.
Okay, yeah, I see that. Yeah. Wine Mom? And that's like, again,
Um,
I'm curious how you
sorry, go ahead.
interpret this.
Oh boy.
Well, how I avoid misinformation?
Yeah, because I think
Yeah.
you like use the internet in a way that many people relatably do. I'm poisoned by having to see it through work, so I'm curious how you
Right.
use the internet.
Okay, well, first of all, if I see something and I'm really unsure whether I can believe it or not,
Me.
I ask the people I know who do journalism. That's one of the first things I do. But no, in all seriousness, whenever I am looking up a topic or something, I try to get as many media sources as possible. I try to cross reference, and really I just try to use some logic.
Mhm.
And like honestly, like I've told you guys this before, like I watch the parliament stuff that you see that sometimes it's on the news. Like I, as a kid, even I used to watch that stuff on TV because I wanted to hear the actual arguments to know what is actually going on in the political climate.
Hmm.
Um, and then especially like with what's currently happening in Ukraine, I try to find people who are everyday people who live in Ukraine right now who are posting updates regularly, and I try to cross reference that with what I'm seeing in the news. Um, and I think also a really big one is I try to challenge my bias. So if I have an idea where I'm like, this is what's true and I know this is true, I try to discredit myself in order to find out if I'm right or if I'm wrong. If that even makes any sense. But basically, I just try to like challenge my opinion and see if it's just a biased opinion or if there's a pattern from like a larger group.
Yeah,
Yeah, I
that's
find
really
that a
well
lot
put.
more. Yeah, actually, that's smarter than what most people do.
I like that a
I
lot.
just,
I can't even really add that much in terms of my personal opinion because it covered most of the bases. Like
Mm-hmm.
I enjoy your idea of not only challenging your personal opinions but like checking ground level humans and what they're doing. Um,
Yeah.
I think it's also important to understand what interests the people around you may have in the subject. So as you're understanding misinformation, it's also trying to understand like what type of people are giving you that news source or who you found it from.
Yeah.
So as you're like looking at it, like is it your friend who's like a little bit more into like his trucks and like, farming. So maybe you should be a little understanding of the political perspective that may come from, you know?
Mhm.
That's a very big point. Is that like it's very easy to automatically discredit someone whose political opinions do not align with yours. Because I will say 90% of the time I know Raza's going to agree with my political opinion. So when I go to him for a question, he's going to give me all the answers that align with what I'm thinking. So I
Yeah.
have in the past, I have had conversations with people who don't have aligning political opinions with me so
Mm-hmm.
that I can pick apart their stories and also like cross reference their sort of, I guess, where they're getting their information. I literally just had a conversation with a family member, I'd say like maybe a month ago, about the convoy, and she relayed some information to me, and I was like, first of all, that's already been discredited along multiple platforms. So that's
Mm-hmm.
not anywhere true. But like, where did you get that information, right? And I just asked, like, like, oh, I want to know, did you get that info? Like, I want to chat, I want to read it. Um, Literally, it was just a random person at the grocery store. And I was like,
Mm,
this is why you can't just
Yeah.
take political opinions that are being tossed at you and be like, this is accurate. You know what I mean?
yeah.
Challenge yourself, and like, don't be afraid to ask people their sources. That's a big thing. Ask them their source.
I
What's the
was
So
problem?
just,
so the
yeah,
so the
I
next
was
one
just
that
gonna
leads
say
into the next question very well,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So why is combating misinformation important? And regardless of the political spectrum, right? Like regardless of if you're right on the conservative side or the liberal side, right? Like why is it dangerous?
because it stokes up the wrong type of reaction. It can be a violent reaction, or it can be a fear reaction, or it can be like a reaction that is not good for the public well-being. So you want to be like this whole Rona thing that happened. The amount of misinformation that happened, that came out of it, riled up the wrong reaction, and now we're seeing the consequence of that sort of misinformation. So it's just misinformation is there to serve your own interests, right? So like you're going to be, when you're looking at these things, you have to figure out why there is this misinformation going on. Maybe it could be driving a certain point, or it could be arguing a certain point. It just because everybody has an opinion, regardless of how right or wrong it is.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So the question ultimately is, why is it important to combat misinformation? And I think I mean, regardless of political standing, why it's important is because you have to be careful what kind of information you take as gospel, right? Because if you take the wrong information and you so proudly carry that around, then you become part of the misinformation circle. And like, that's embarrassing. And maybe that's not a nice way to like, or maybe not a nice reason for me to give people to like combat misinformation. Is like, do you want to look stupid? No.
Mm-hmm.
So I encourage you to like, because this is the thing, even if somebody has an opinion that doesn't align with mine, if they are educated in what they're talking about and they're showing me non-misinformation opinions, right? I'm probably going to take you a little bit more seriously, and I'm going to be willing to have a discussion with you more so about moralities versus like political opinions, right? But if you come to me with a bunch of like random misinformation that you got from some Reddit forum, I don't respect you enough to have the conversation. So even if you have a legitimate opinion or response or fact, I don't care. You know what I mean? So it's like,
so to like feel confident in yourself, and
so you don't look stupid. I mean, you guys, your reasons are legitimate. Like, don't spread misinformation because it cause fear mongering, which we know this already. We've talked about this times. But for me, I'm trying to appeal to the people who have these shitty opinions and refuse to challenge them because they think that they are all right and smart and above everyone. But it's like, you look stupid.
Yeah, so then that's where mine comes in differently, is that I see it as something that's a unifying issue that we see across the board and across the political issues or war-based issues right now, is the demand for freedom, right? And wanting justice, right? And this misinformation distracts you from your ability to educate yourself on how to politically organize, how to create any sort of impactful movement, on how to change infrastructure within your society, on how to alter the banking system in the favor of your culture or community, right? It's a big distraction for something that I think mad people could benefit from taking the time to understand, because then you can truly feel like you're participating in this. Half the reason people feel like they can't trust anything is because they don't understand what you're engaging with.
Yeah. Because
I mean,
Oh boy.
well, no. So like I agree, but there's just one thing that I always think about when I think about the political climate, right? Is the way that I choose to look at politics. Maybe I'm derailing a little bit from what we're talking about, but the way that I choose to look at politics is I think about when my mom or my grandmother were younger and the political climate surrounding them was definitely not favorable. And they had opposing opinions to their older family members or grandparents or whatever, and how desperately they wanted to be heard and understood, right? So when I take politics into account now as an adult, I try and always look at new political opinions or motives or movements or whatever, and I try and look at them as that younger person wanting to be heard and understood. Because
Yeah.
I would hope that one day when I have a child, if their political opinions are not my own, that I have enough respect to listen and understand and try to find common ground. And I say this in the nicest way. I say this in the very nicest way possible, because I've had this conversation with an older person recently. Once you reach a certain age, the political climate is no longer yours. So shut up. Start listening to what the younger people who are going to live the next 50 years in the political climate have to say. You know what I mean? That's my opinion, but
No, I agree. Like,
you know, like it's their lives. Like I've said to older people in my life, with
Okay.
all due respect, the political climate, it's my life. This is my government that I have to grow up into and become an adult and have participate in. And you've got like another 5 years. Shut up.
no,
Yeah,
yeah, like
that's that is
it
a
In the
very
doesn't.
nicest
tricky
way.
thing
In the nicest way. I
societally.
know it's not. I know what you're trying to say, Bailey. But the reality is like young people are the people that are going to be moving the new politics, and it's what they want for the next however many years. Of course, you would hope that you would be thought of in that decision, but it's like when it comes to things that are more important to young people, like healthcare and
I
education,
agree, but
stuff like that.
it becomes such a slippery slope, right? Because then who decides who's worthy of making these decisions?
Of course, but it's
Right.
like we continue to fight old people problems in
But at the
politics.
same time, you gotta consider them regardless, because no matter there are far too many old fucking people in charge of everything, and it is way
Yeah,
too
they
pure
make
to
up
it.
a lot of our world. So you have
Which
to
is the
like look.
problem.
Yeah, so you have to like right now we have to like know what they're saying, and we have to understand where they're coming from because they could make or break the world, and it sucks.
It's
How it
it's
Right.
is.
horrid. It's horrid. Look at
Yeah.
Japan.
That's the problem.
Japan's like a case study of this, right?
Well, I mean,
And so it's
what we're
like,
currently watching happen is an old man's problem.
Yes.
I don't
Yeah.
want to get into that right now. I would like to
Of
keep it
course
moving.
not.
So, how do you educate someone when like the narrative could be taking a spin for the worse, right? So it's like without any specific issues in mind, right? You're having a debate with your buddy. How do you go like, hold up, maybe we both need to go do some Googling. What is the most effective way of doing that? Would you
Oh,
suggest?
that's a tricky one.
You say,
Well,
I don't want to get into it right now. That's what you say.
I did.
Oh my gosh, see a joke when there's a joke being made and laugh. See a joke and laugh. No, but in if you are getting into a situation where you're finding that it's becoming an argument more than a conversation, there is nothing wrong with saying, okay, I need to take some time to like actually look into what you're talking about before we continue this conversation. Like it's okay. This is the big thing. It is okay to say you don't have enough information to have the argument. There's nothing wrong with that. Come back later.
yeah, it's just like you like, and I think ultimately we all want to be right in our own way, and then we don't really
Absolutely.
back down. Yeah, and we don't really back down. So when we say, "Oh, I don't know about that, and maybe I should come back," some more information, people will say that as like a sign of weakness. We're like, okay, he clearly does not know what he's talking about, so I can just hit him with more hard facts, even though they're wrong. So I think it's a matter of just knowing yourself and like being like, okay, I don't know too much about this. Maybe let's take a breather. Let me teach myself on this, and then come back, and it'll be a fair discussion where both people are on the same playing field.
Yeah, I will say I've been in an argument where someone is pushing some narrative down my throat, and I will say, "Oh, really? I'm gonna look that up." And the response is, "No, don't look it up. Take what I'm saying as fact."
Oh
And it's like,
shit!
That's when you know the argument is done, because there is no room to grow, and it's like,
Yeah.
as much as there's like, oh, let's not get heated, let's just learn when people don't have the capacity to expand their knowledge. You know what I mean? Like when
Yeah.
you get to the point where
Yeah,
you're
but
talking to someone and they don't want you to double check their facts, that's a person you just leave them alone.
yeah. Yeah,
It's
that's
not worth.
right. Yeah. I'm fully on board with that. So it's like pretty much just
Yeah.
making sure we're all on board to take a breather and revisit is what I would say, especially as
Yeah.
advice to others, right? Is to take a breather and then calmly come back to the situation. And it's okay to admit you don't know, you know?
Or you
But
could fight like we do. That's okay.
yeah, or you could start a podcast with your friends and just argue politically, and then have people entertain themselves by joining in the chat, and then critically arguing with each other afterwards. But that's
Yeah.
for another day. So I've got the next section to break it up before we get to the nitty gritty advice. We're doing the "Am I the Asshole" part. Raza picked a good one. It's a good little tit for tat. We'll all be on the same page, but it's a fun combo. So. We do have a disclaimer that none of us are from the culture of the story, but it's still, I feel like, pretty something unanimous, and we have a good little diverse perspective. The critical twist is at the end. Okay, so am I the asshole for making a quote-unquote racist joke? I, 15 female, was hanging out with my 16 female friend, and we were talking about different cuisines. She brought up Chinese cuisines, and I made a joke saying how I ate dog and snake meat. The joke was because dogs and snakes were my favorite animals. This person themselves is Chinese who made this joke, right?
Right. Right.
They're there with their 16-year-old friend, who's a white girl, who then continued to go on a rampage with them, going off about how they're racist and how they can't make that joke and how it's inappropriate. But then this Cantonese woman specifically retorted, saying that they have both eaten both those meats and it is something of their culture, right? So
Right.
it became a tricky situation by the end of it because they got heated. The one girl left, and then this white girl left and went home and sent a scathing remark saying that this is inappropriate and that she's not allowed to do this and that she should never do it. But again, this woman is Cantonese, made these remarks out of personal experience and then out of what she thought was confidence, right? Is she
Okay.
the asshole for making that joke in the first place?
So the Cantonese woman made the joke about eating dogs and snakes.
Yes. And admittedly ate snakes and dogs.
Yes.
Oh, well, we know I don't
Well,
love that.
Yeah, but we
A
know.
joke is a joke.
Yeah. So I find it like I see this a lot, and like in my personal experience, I always find it when a Caucasian person gets offended about like a racist joke. I find it that's a little more insensitive because they are offended. It's offended because they are offended, not because of the other parties. But generally speaking, I don't think this person or the Cantonese person is in the wrong.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think they are an asshole for telling the joke. I mean,
Yeah.
maybe the climate wasn't very accepting of the joke. But I mean, if somebody made that joke to me, like I wouldn't overreact. I would be like, "Ha, it's a little cringy, thanks," and like move on from it and kind of be like, "Let me just ignore that," because like that for me that would upset me because of animals. We know this, but I mean, like
Yes.
I would just be
Yeah.
like, "Okay,
LMAO.
joke," and just
Yeah.
like not hyperfixate on something that doesn't need
Exactly.
to be continued.
And I think
you know?
you bring up a great point with that, because that's the white people white knighting, right? Like you can
Yeah.
express like, yeah, it's a little cringe, I found that uncomfortable, and leave it at that. You don't have to be like, oh, you're
I wouldn't
destroying the world.
I wouldn't even do that though. I would just be like, "Hey," like I wouldn't even give it anything. Like if I didn't like a joke, like I wouldn't react poorly. I would just be like, "Okay," and like I wouldn't even give it space to breathe. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
I'd be like, "Cool joke."
So
Thumbs up, dude.
so I got lost. So what ultimately, as we conclude, what is the answer? Are they the asshole?
No, they're not. They're not an
yeah.
asshole. They just picked the wrong audience.
All right. Okay.
Read the room, I guess.
Read the
Yeah.
room.
Read the room. I think context, again, as always, it seems like every Am I the Asshole, the answer is context is important. You know what I'm
Yes.
saying?
Yeah.
Always. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Generally speaking. Yeah.
So, now we're going on to the end half, and this is where me and Raza are bringing in a little bit of our own experience. But I think Wine Mom pretty much already fucking summarized how to do this in very clear ways. So, it's like, what can your average person do to deal with misinformation as they're trying to like interpret the news and take in current events? Again, no matter what political leaning you have. And then me and Raza, we're going to go off with a couple tips. And then we'll get Wine Mom's thoughts. But since you already gave a good one, then we'll get you to hop in with a pro tip again. And then I have one more question after that. So first, I will start off with is the most simple, is like something that Wine Mom already pointed out. It's just like read mad different sources. Okay, so you're in America, read the fucking BBC, read Al Jazeera, read RT, read the Russian propaganda. Like, if part of understanding the news is part of understanding what other people are being fed. And that will help you understand what the realistic interpretation of things are in the world. And when you go from there, when you understand the two sides of every story, then you can start to check in on the sources and do as Wine Mom outlined and check what's going on in the ground. That's when you get into the nitty gritty of Twitter and what's going on here, what's going on there, and then you contrast it with like, oh, well, this one side's media is saying this and this side's media is saying that, but I saw this happen today, so thus X, Y, and Z. That would be my most realistic advice, is to combine those levels of investigation. Now, Raza, what would your tips be?
Mine would be a little bit more complex than Bailey's. Mine would be like, first check the sources, check how credible the sources are, get at least 3 sources, because that's how we were taught. And then, yeah, like get all, like, it's one thing to get, to check all of this, like to check all the spectrums, but it's also another thing to see how valid the spectrums are. Look into their past to see if they have done misinformation in the past, and see their own standards, see if their own like journalism integrity or journalistic integrity plays a role, like a heavy role in what they do. So like that's why I have a hard time with it.
Good question to add to your point, right? How do you interpret someone's journalistic integrity? How do you prove that?
It's just by seeing if they have done something wrong in the past and how they have fixed it, how they have recovered, and how their career in a way has like been impacted by it. Like if they have learned, if they have screwed up in the past and they have done good journalism since then I will pay them some mind. But if they learn, if they screw up and then they keep on screwing up, or they get hired by like a questionable news agency, then I'd be like, maybe I should not look at this. So it's all about looking at the person who's even writing the story, because that's how finicky it can become.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so then super quick. I know it sounds like a simple question to us, Raza, but how do you check that? Where are you checking to make sure that they apologized? Is it just taking the diligence to go through Twitter, or do you Google the person's name?
Yeah, you would Google them. Not just for like the apologizing sake, but like just to see what they have done since they apologized, because actions speak louder than words, right?
Physically, so like how do you get that information?
You would just Google it, looking into if other people are writing on them, checking their own diligency posts, then by looking at what they have done or written or like created by simply going on Google.
So then, how do you recommend, like, if I'm a busy human, I'm your average Joe. I'm going to work 9 to 5 every fucking day. I gotta go home. I gotta raise kids, right?
Mm-hmm.
What do I
Mm-hmm.
do if I don't have time to double check those
So there
journals?
are these great apps that Bailey has shown me. It's called Grounded News, which actually takes all of the news sources and aggregates them together about and and then tells you how honest they are or how dishonest they are, and then it also shows you what side of the political spectrum it is on, or there, or where they are on the political spectrum. So everybody has a phone, right? So you would just download that, and then it's all at a glance for you. So even if you're super busy, you have that information right there for you and easy to digest because it's built by journalists but for public
Cool.
consumption.
Remind me, and I'll put that in the link of the description. So then
Grounded
that's
news.
to summarize that. Then from the Bailey and Raza tips, that's the reason I stuck to that because I knew Raza would be nitty gritty. So you round them together, right?
Mhm.
So first is understanding the bias of the media and your own bias as reading it by getting diverse sources and making sure you're reading the opinions of many people. And then you can
Yes.
understand where you sit on it and what the reality of the issue is. And then you proceed with Raza's recommendations, right? Rather it be using Grounded, the app, so that you can look at multiple sources or other applications, as well as taking the time to just look up the journalists you're reading and the history of what they're writing about. So
Yes.
doing the diligence of understanding yourself and how things are perceived, and then doing the diligence of whoever is creating the content that you are then ingesting.
It's literally like, and this is a joke that not many will get, but it's literally like reading the hadiths of the Quran. That's how I learned it from. If you're gonna, because you want to look at all the sources and to see if the sources are credible, and then the story will make sense.
That's cool. That's a
Sorry.
good way to reference it. I think that's awesome. Wine Mom, now it's pro tip time.
Honestly, I would just say like just have compassion for people who are not able to, I guess, research the same opinions and like look around at different information the way that you would yourself. I think for myself, whenever I'm looking at information that maybe doesn't align with my own opinion, but I'm trying to get an informed answer, is like I try to, like I said earlier, I just try to discredit each side until I find like something in the middle that's fair and makes sense. But
Mhm.
again, I agree with you guys in the sense of like go on Google and look at the people who are writing the articles and double check and do all that stuff as well. But I think like also it's important to like actually pay attention to like the political arguments that are happening. And I really think more people should watch like the debates and stuff that happen because you learn a lot of information there, not just like what they're actually voting on and what the decisions are in politics, but you start to understand like where the misinformation actually is coming from. Um, and that's because I've watched a lot of these debates and I've seen a lot of straight up misinformation be said in the debates and then the next day it's in an article as like leading news, but
Yeah.
it was
Yeah.
it was literally just an argument towards a different political point to try and force that person into a corner. So it's like be careful what you take as fact because it's not always fact, you
Yes.
know?
Yeah. 100%.
Just be
100%.
just
You
be a
gotta
little
think.
bit be me
Again,
be critical of the
The
people that you're
fancy, the
getting
fancy.
information from.
You gotta use the legal term, Wine Mom. You gotta prove beyond a reasonable doubt. You know what I'm saying? That's
Yes.
what
you
you're
know what's
doing, pretty
jokes?
much.
Do you know what's jokes? If nobody knew us, people would think wine mom. No, people wouldn't think that Bailey and I went to journalism school because we're being schooled by wine mom here, literally.
Hey,
It's
we're
but
doing okay.
no, you guys have a lot more information. Like you're way more versed than I am. But I'll say like for me, I'm less interested in like reading articles and stuff. I'm actually more interested in listening to the politicians argue, because I feel like that's where you get a lot of like clear responses to certain policies, certain like rhetoric, and like how different sides sort of think. So like in that sense, like when you hear a liberal argue against a conservative, you get a very clear point of view of like who thinks what way and what sort of narrative is going to come out the next day based on what you've just watched.
I guess that
Bailey's going
is
to
very
disagree with
valid.
me.
Well, because what
I
you
hear
say
him
is
taking his
true.
My
deep breath.
stars is tingling right now.
Yeah.
Because what you say is
Sorry,
true, but it's like, again, when you're educating yourself on the political system, it's like those debates aren't necessarily, it's very good to understand the misinformation and where they're going to be bullshitting, but it's not necessarily where the change is going to be happening, or as you're reading the news, where the actual impactful decision, like you're watching a debate between the left and the right, aren't really going to help us understand what is going to happen during war measures. You know what I mean? Like,
Right,
there's
which you're correct. I'm not going to discredit you in that sense. Like you're correct in what you're saying. But what I'm saying is a lot of times they provide proof in those arguments. So it's like let's say the liberal is pushing some narrative and the conservatives want to agree or discredit. It gives them the opportunity to actually like have multiple parties stand up and actually say where money is going, what they're doing, who's organizing what. So you're getting a little bit of like a, I guess it's like kind of, it's almost as if it's like a secret, but it's not. So that's kind of how I feel about it. But again, like you take
I
that
see.
information, but still research it on your own. I'm not saying don't.
I see where you're coming from. I just giggle because it's like I'm with it. It's just until you get a trumpito, then you get a trumpito, and then
Yeah, that's
then
the
the whole
thing.
thing's
Yeah.
blown
I
up.
don't know what you mean. I don't know what you mean.
Like the Orange Man's fan base.
Hmm.
Yeah,
Like,
because as soon as you get someone who doesn't give a fuck about how the debates work, then what? How do you
Yeah,
even
so then that's
understand what's real?
okay. So right, so then that's my point. If you're not willing to look at all sides of politics, then maybe like you shouldn't be giving out your opinion. You can form an opinion,
Yeah,
absolutely.
but like
But if
you
you're
have
not
no.
willing to expand your knowledge, then keep your opinion to yourself. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but when you got a dude in office, you've got no choice. You're watching the debates. You're not learning anything when he's just willing to just like
Right, but that's not the only
sleepy,
debate you
sleepy
watch.
Joe. You know what I'm saying?
Right, which you're right, Bailey, but again, if that's the only debate you're watching, you have a bigger problem.
Okay, touche. Valid,
Like
valid point.
I'll say throughout this that's been going on in the Ukraine, I'm watching all the NATO debates because I want to understand what's going on, who's having what opinion, why, what historical meanings they have in order to actually understand the opinions that are being moving forward and how people are like using old opinions to create new politics. You know what I mean? If that even
Yeah.
makes any sense. But it's
No,
like
it does.
I just say like it's the same thing when you're talking about like court proceedings if you're thinking about law. Do you know how much you can learn about general law just from watching one true crime proceeding? So much information there. So it's like challenge yourself and like look at those other things and see what's there. What, Raza?
no, it's okay. I was just reading something. No, I agree with you
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
I'm rocking
on
with it.
that. It's because you have to like challenge people's like standpoints in order to
Mm-hmm.
understand where they're coming from. And like back on the on the Trumpito point, is this like what we're talking about works in general type of like debates, but then once you have people like QAnon or Trumpito mofos, then you're like it's sort of turned on if its head.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
like so you have to like sort of understand, it's hard to, but you have to understand the other side's point of view, which is
Yeah.
very, very hard to do if you're
So
in
to
that
Right.
round off, the
mindset.
pod, I want to reinforce the fun message that we ended off the last one with. Right? Is that it's like why mom's super supportive shit of like it's okay to sit back and say I need to take the time to do some more reading. You know, whenever
Mm-hmm.
you're stepping into a situation, like it's important to prioritize how you feel entering it and also acknowledging your own understanding of the situation, which is very
Yeah.
difficult for many to do. And that will help avoid conflict and all the nasty stuff you don't want to deal with nowadays. Again, no matter what you believe.
Mm-hmm.
Can we get a positive hoorah?
Yay.
Just know your sources and check them, and then do what Wine Mom said. Come back.
Be pragmatic. Come on.
And
You're an adult.
be realistic about your expectations, and then just understand. That's all you need to do. Well, as humans, we have a hard time understanding each other. So once we get that, I think a lot of problems will be solved.
Yes.
So, I'm on board with that. Thank you, kids. I like to
There's
think
a positive sunshine right there.
I think you did it. I think you did it. And thank you, Wine Mom. I think you brought a very valid perspective and helped to balance out our preachiness by helping bring like a very human look at it all. So now, to give you a more human look, Raza has selected a tweet of the day that is very relatable for everybody.
Not to everybody. Right. It's just him.
Just him.
So,
yeah.
Just Bayley?
Raza's tweet of the day is on screen.
You'll see. Yeah.
Okay.
It now says, do you guys ever jerk off 6 times before 5 a.m.?
Oh, yeah. That's related. That's definitely... I'm sorry. For your throat.
Yeah.
A good one. I respect it.
Yo, come on. It doesn't get that wild, though, all right? It's just, I start the day early. So sometimes habits start early too, Self-care routines.
Nobody asked him about that.
Man's got to moisturize already. You know what I mean?
Bayley, come on.
You're literally incriminating yourself without.
No, we didn't even have to. It's early evening. Relax. Wild.
The best time to do it is like once the day is done. Once you're just winding down. This man is a wild man. He's just like, it's the first thing I do.
I mean,
it's called calisthenics, okay?
Whatever you say,
but so, Wine Mom, give us. I want to throw it to you impromptu. Give us the call to actions before we sign off and go to the just chatting.
Oh, so this is the end of the podcast. If you want to watch me talk shit to these two idiots, then you should join us when we're live, which is going to be in the next few minutes for everybody who's watching now. But for the listeners, it's Mondays at 6 p.m. That's when we record. Come hang out, and then around 7:30, 7 o'clock, we talk shit. Thank you.
And get hit.
Oh, Christ. Oh, Lord.
All right, we're putting on the outro, and then we'll be right back just chatting. The outro's on for just a minute. See you soon,
Later,
kids. See you soon.
Losers.
Thank you again for watching us badly talk about these topics.
You can follow us on Twitch, Marching Into Madness, all one word, no space. On the gram, marching_into_madness, and on Patreon at patreon.com/marching-into-madness. And again, on Le Discord at Marching Into Madness.
Join us, and Bayley will pay you 10 whole Canadian dollars.
You can follow Whitey over at gnarly_media on the Insta. You must definitely follow the life of our whole podcast, Wine Mom, at XWineMomX, because the year's 2002, and we still have the X in our names. And me, your favorite brown boy, at _R.R_Malik_.
Thank you for the third time. We love you. Drink some milk and be healthy.
Remember, kids, say no to school and yes to
It's like such bad advice. It's like, here we put this well-formulated podcast together with good insight on facts and truth and political points and social issues. Don't go to school, dude.
Oh, God.
Bailey listens to
Motherfucker
me.
shouldn't be near school after saying that.
It's like Bailey listens to me say the sentence and he goes, maybe I should say my sentence now.